What's going on, Workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And welcome, Bellular, to the Final Fantasy XIV community. Just now recently tweeting out that he's going to be diving back in to Final Fantasy XIV with the first look. And it's a great time to kind of talk about what's going on with the state of the game. Should you jump in? Should you pre-order Endwalker? Which, if you are going to be around for any amount of time, you should absolutely do that just for the earring alone, for that experience boost. But that's what today's video is going to be about, especially as we welcome in more and more WoW refugees. Over the course of our streams, I've been seeing it on your stream all day. Hey, I'm coming over from WoW. What do I need to know? And so, yeah, we're going to sit down and just kind of, A, recover from FanFest this weekend, but B, kind of talk about this for you guys here today. Chris, the show and the floor is yours right now. I'm going to sip my coffee while I listen.
So, first of all, anybody here fan of the channel or not doesn't consume a ton of WoW content on YouTube, you're like, who in the world is Bellular?
Yeah.
So Bellular is a UK based content creator. I always see him on YouTube. I assume he has a Twitch channel. Runs a game studio, runs 2 channels that I know of. Maybe he's like Brian and he has 20. And one is centered on gaming news and one is centered specifically on World of Warcraft news. So maybe he needs a 14 channel if he likes it. And he typically covers the name for YouTube viewers. He covers it kind of like Philip DeFranco, where covers the news, a little bit of his opinion, highly polished content. Definitely has a team supporting him, definitely puts it out consistently on time, stays pretty well balanced. Even when he needs to take a break for the game for his own personal reasons, he continues to cover the importance of what you need to know in patches. Sometimes he gets criticized for that. You're covering the game and you don't even play it. Is that just for the views? You can't win. Seeing him dive into this game is good because, first of all, the game always needs more content creators. Always, always, always. We've had people over the weekend saying, you know what? I had a blast this weekend. I'd love to cover my journey and get into content creation. How do I do that? More content creators is better. The great thing about a new content creator coming from another game or just starting out on their journey as a content creator is nobody has to watch them. And so if you don't like them, don't watch them. And you're exactly where you were before they started. So more is better. And so definitely welcome from a content creation standpoint if he decides to cover it. The reason I think he would want to cover it, the reason I think it would come up is that when I watch Bellular videos, I feel like regularly when he gets frustrated with World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy is a game that does sometimes come up in comparisons because they are very similar games, more so than any other game is similar to either one of them. They are very much kind of fraternal twins that have lived different lives. There is nobody more similar than them. And yes, they don't appreciate being called the same person.
McDonald's
and as a brother of 2 twins, they're not the same person, but to the rest of us, they look a lot alike.
Yeah.
And so he regularly references it when you see a game make a choice that's a hard choice. They said, in the development room, we had a choice between 3 or 4 doors, and they all had something bad about them, and we had to pick one and charge through it. The first thing that some portion of the community will do is goes, well, I would just pick a door with no bad news. Okay, well, that's not the world we live in. And so when they do walk through that and we leave that group behind looking for perfection that doesn't exist, we are quick to say, I wish they picked a different door. I wish that we didn't have that set of bad news. Or was that really the best door? And so when we look at the choices they have to make, do I delay content or do I cut the content from a patch? Final Fantasy has gone with the cut the content, and they've released in the time that it has gone from World of Warcraft's 9.0 through 9.05 to 9.1. In that time, Final Fantasy will come out from 5. I think it was like 5.3 or something at the time to 5.35, 5.4, 5.45, 5.5, 5.55, have a fan fest in the middle. Like, it's a lot. But we did that by we've reduced the number of dungeons per patch. We cut an ultimate. We cut some cosmetic things like the new instruments. For the bards in their explorer mode or whatever. We cut things, right? And odds are there's something that got cut that affected you. Odds are there's some aspect of the game that you're like, I wish I'm okay if they cut things. I wish they hadn't cut my thing.
Mm-hmm. And one way that 14 handles this, because I can already hear some people saying, but Yoshi P said he wasn't going to cut content, that they'd keep with the schedule. And outside of the ultimate, alone, Yoshi P also doesn't announce everything that's coming to the expansion. We had or at least the understanding that the farms, Island Sanctuary, might actually have been in Shadowbringers. But that's something easy that doesn't have a date or a patch number tied to it. Yoshi P doesn't set expectations that far out. So it's easier to sit here and just go ahead and just like, well, we got to address this. And that's actually agile methodology development structure in which that they have the board. what can we do, what can't we do. And what most likely is, could have happened behind the scenes is that, hey, we're living this new normal, we're doing this remote stuff. Okay, instead of trying to take on this big stuff that we need the team to really be synced and collaborate on, we can go ahead and focusing on these other items. We're going to make those the priority for now, get those things done, and then come back and deliver that from there. So the core thing that I'm curious, especially as it relates to like Bellular in general, is that he covers the lore of the game. He covers the story of the game. I love the lore and the story of the game. However, like, when we look at 2.0, because he said that he's tried to play it before, and that's kind of where like our advice from a WoW to a WoW refugee perspective always kind of fluctuates. Like, if you really like story, this is going to be a foundation to a great story. But note that just like when you're laying your foundation or you're buying tires for your car, it's necessary. It's important. It keeps you alive and safe and helps set up the rest of like your experience. But, you're not going to sit here and that's where like I would love to see that aspect. And so I just go, man, like what's the right entry point for him? And being that he does lore and he likes story, I don't think there is a way for that. And hopefully we can see him stick it through just so he can get into that critically acclaimed Heavensward expansion, because that would be, I would love to see that, especially off of Endwalker. Hands down, and one of the things that we keep seeing right now, both with Reaper and obviously with the Endwalker expansion, is not just hype, but a lot more focus, a lot more interested people in it. And then you pair that, like we talked about yesterday, with the Oceanic Data Center, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, I just see pieces falling in line to where like it's not about doing the biggest thing, the best thing, the most grandiose promise. It's about delivering consistent quality content that people can sit here and expect. And yes, we're all going to be like, us vets are all going to be waiting 6 months for the next raid. Like that's just the reality. Outside of the the new zone, but like the next actual raid, Pandemonium, 6 months. That's what we all have to do that together. No one's getting the raid
people who
early.
cleared E12 for the first time week 1.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
That's a gap. But for the players coming in, for the players getting to this content now, for the players who have will be coming in over the summer, like this is the time for 14 to shine, and it typically does. Like there's so much going into it, and honestly, I think that for players like Bellular, for more WoW refugees, this is, I think, a really good opportunity. And we definitely, if you're watching this video and you've never seen the channel before, we definitely like to encourage you to start with a free trial. We have a link in the description of all of our videos. We don't get a cent for it, and we're I'm happy that we can help people discover this game and hopefully find a new home, a new community, and a good way to kind of compare and contrast these massive games that, yes, some people don't like to hear them like compared, but they're the only two biggest subscription-based MMOs. Like, okay, we just go down the list and all of a sudden it's like feature after feature. It's just a matter of who does it different, and then better can always be debated in the comments in that regards. My goodness.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think for Bellular, what comes up here uniquely is as people come in this week, as people, obviously we know his name because he puts out content, but
right.
Each and every person who decides to pick up this game, when somebody picks up this game for the first time or is looking to pick up this game for the first time, we usually ask their background.
Right.
My background is D&D. Okay, you're probably very narrative based. Okay, my background is, in fighting games. Okay, you're probably very rotations and combat based. And so usually somebody's background, what game they're coming to us from, helps kind of clue that in. I play single player games. Okay, let's focus on what's going to be different here. But World of Warcraft, because it has so much in common on a feature list level, it actually triggers more questions. Mm-hmm. It triggers more questions. It doesn't really answer anything. What do I need to know when I'm getting into 14? Where are you coming from? Oh, well, I've been playing WoW for 15 years.
Okay.
All right. So how have you been playing WoW? Well, I'm a Mythic World First Raider. Okay, that's a point to come from. Well, I'm super into the story. I read all the books. I stop and do every quest. I'm big into content creators like Noble87. Okay. I'm a gold maker. I watch Once by Gold. I watch The Lazy Gold Maker. I watch Persephone. I watch Samadan. Okay. that's a different direction to come in from. So there's a lot of aspects to the community, and there's a lot of in-betweens. There's a lot of people that don't find themselves living in just one bucket. They dip between several. They're casual in a bunch of areas and maybe take one thing really hardcore. And depending on where Bellular himself is coming from, there are things you need to know. The first thing that you need to know, all WoW players need to know, is this is going to be slow. Depending on where he's returning from, if he's starting from scratch, this game, WoW just went through a massive shift where they changed the new player experience and will set up the long-term health of this game for a long time. If Shadowlands is an utter failure of an expansion, pre-patch for Shadowlands was an incredible gift to the new player experience. ARR's never had that.
Yeah.
We are still at a point where speeding up experience and pruning a handful of quests is the best we can do.
Right.
And so you are playing through very old content in order. This is a narrative-based game first, because you have to remember World of Warcraft comes from an RTS. Final Fantasy comes from a series of storied franchises. And so they came in with different strengths. They filled in a lot of their weaknesses over the years, but those first expansions are pretty heavily influenced by what was their backbone. And so it's a lot of story. It's poorly voice acted compared to current expansions. It just is paced. They've learned a lot about making games. And so you are playing through that in order. And it is going to be slow. And picture it being like Shadowlands, where you have to clear the story first once, whether you want to or not, to get flying unlocked, to get into the content that you may have actually come to play. The second thing is the global cooldown. The global cooldown is like 5 times longer. It's 2.5 seconds. It's eternal. It's so long. We have what's called off the global cooldown abilities later that add back in that APM. And until you get to those, you know, your jobs aren't even going to feel like anything until they're what's called jobs, which is at level 30. It's just the combat is also going to be slow. Those are the two biggest things that, regardless of what you're coming in for WoW, are going to be like, I've got a character that's 15 years old, and this new baby can't do what that character can.
Yeah. Ultimate question to you, ultimate question to Chad, ultimate question for the comments. Like, what 14 creator does he team up with? When we talked about this in terms of the theoretical Asmongold playing with Scott Zone, kind of, dream team setup in terms of like how he would approach it, skip story, like just get to the game content, team up with somebody who knows how to kind of run that content with you. Who would be Bellular's 14 equivalent to come in, help him through that content? Because community, in my mind, is king. One thing, if we take from this last Fan Fest, is that, and what we keep seeing is that the community just being broad, being diverse, like that's the wonderful thing. Like when you go watch Zeppel's reaction to the I don't know why my brain went to honey buns. Hopefully that doesn't become the new term for the male Viera. Brian said honey buns, there it is. But for the male Viera coming into play, her reaction to that, like there's all these great like sections of the community that are rally around. So question. Who is Bellular?
I think it's got to be Haps.
Haps?
I think it's got to be Mr. Happy.
Yeah.
Because you need a broad, deep, wide knowledge base that has years and years of knowledge in lore, in game mechanics, in what the different modes are, who regularly covers all of the news, whether or not it is their favorite content.
Okay.
I don't know if the personalities line up. I don't know. But that's like, if we're just pairing up our dream team in our head, whether or not they want it, we're just going to take two unknowing, non-consenting adults and shove them into a room to play video games for 500 hours straight. That's a weird version of the universe we live in. But I think it's Haps and Bellular are the pairing there to get him set up. His passion for showing the lore and catching people up as we've gone into the different patches with Classic, I think would be very well paired with FS. His coverage of the news and kind of things like that would be very well paired with somebody that kindly covers the news and has a passion like that, like Mione. There's a lot there. Somebody who's played WoW before, somebody like Desperius with a deep understanding of class mechanics in both games.
Yeah.
There's a whole list for sheer amount of coverage. You've got Zeppelin Spofy with their strengths. But I think Haps is the one that is well-rounded enough at just an incredible knowledge level, who has a work ethic that, like Bellular, where like, when the answer is how do they have work-life balance, and I was like, I think the simple answer is that they don't.
Yeah.
I think the simple answer is that they work a lot. They're very passionate for what they do, and they give up a lot for the community that they're passionate for. Whether or not that should be expected, it is what they're doing, and I think that's where I would put that pairing.
All right. Well, we'll ultimately see what happens. Honestly, I'm really excited to see. I watch his his coverage in like especially from his news coverage, and yeah, sometimes it auto plays, and I find myself listening in on, WoW, even though I have no context to what's happening. But now I'm excited to see, especially because obviously some of his latest videos. I've been watching some of his clips. And then yeah, so whoever he was, I'm not an expert on his content by any means, but whoever he was podcasting with and live reacting with the different interviews on, and him just responding with the 14 meme, I go, there's a guy, and I like right there. I don't know his name yet, but yeah, have you played the the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy 14 now with Heaven's Word in the free trial? So yeah, I'm just like, this is really cool news. I'm really excited. I hope he enjoys himself and his journey. And like I always kind of tell a lot of people, I don't want you to rush. I don't want you to rush your experience, but there is something to getting to level 50 and unlocking flying that opens up an entire world of content to you. And my heart breaks when we lose somebody in that 30 to 50 spot, when it's like, that's, I never saw the quest post ARR as the real deal breaker. It was some for some people, but I always felt that it was the 30 to 50 a slot. And now when you hit 50 and open up flying and open up the ability to do so much more, that I think and especially with your job and how it feels at 50 compared to at 49 on some of the jobs, like it just starts to kind of come together and ultimately, just deliver in that opinion. So anyway, welcome Bellular. We're happy that you're checking out the game, and hopefully you enjoy it. But anyway, Chris, you got any final thoughts before we wrap up this video?
No, I'm excited for anybody new that wants to get into the game. It's an incredibly welcoming community, and just focus on what you like about the game. Try to give it all a shot. If you don't like it, you can skip anything you want. The community gets particularly defensive about skipping story content because it means a lot to many of them, but there is no wrong way to play as long as you are not hurting anybody else. And you can always go back. And so if you need to get to the part you're excited about to realize that something you were going to skip over is important, then do it in the order that fits you. Have a good time. It is meant to be a game first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
It should be fun.
Should be fun. So have fun out there, guys. It's going to be a long summer, but we'll get through it. We're going to have a lot of fun on the way. So for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thank you so much for watching. We're glad you're here. Hopefully you have a fantastic day, but until next time,
take care.